When we are talking about business reorganization or corporate restructuring, we are basically talking about great change, significant changes happening within an organization, which will change definitely its direction, change its focus and composition if need be. We are going to be looking at what reorganization really is and 4 items and elements that make a successful business reorganization, and also what you as a student must really look for when it comes to business reorganization and the need for business reorganization in a question. And last but not the least, the types of business reorganizations that we have, which will be under operational or financial, but these are the jugglers. There are other types which we are going to be looking at. Caveat: what we are not going to be looking at in this episode is that we are not going to be looking at critical reflection or an evaluation of implementation of corporate restructuring, but we are going to talk about what it is, types of it. We are going to talk about the need for reorganization, and we are going to talk about the 4 critical level of understanding that we must have and look for in our exams question under case study that is talking about reorganization for it to be successful or not, especially when we are concluding on our write-up. From GJAMES Associate Channel, Gbenga Olatunji FCA. Why won't you subscribe? Why won't you click notifications so that henceforth you'll be part of the community and you never miss any upload? What is business reorganization or corporate restructuring? Basically, it involves critical changes in business strategy. How we do things will be affected in business corporate reorganization. It equally involves the process of our remodeling, that is, its impact on the model of our business operations. Also, business reorganization is the process of changing the management team of the organization and also the financial structure, the process of effecting changes in the financial structure of an organization, the legal structure, the legal framework, the process of changing the legal framework of an organization and its ownership. So basically we can sum it up as that the business reorganization or corporate restructuring is the process of changing the organization's strategy, model, management team, the financial structure and legal and ownership of a business. Now, having established what business restructuring really is, let's answer the question why, that is, the need for business reorganization and corporate restructuring. When an organization is experiencing a loss of market share, when there's a reduction in the profit margin of an organization, we may look at business reorganization and restructuring. When there is a major change in the marketplace, when the market dynamics of our industries have changed, we may need to capitalize on business reorganization. A need could equally arise when we need to turn a new leaf and a new direction, probably as a result of loss of market share and the like, but we need to turn a new leaf and a new direction, focusing on a new thing or a new niche, if possible begin to make a new product. So there will be need for business reorganization. Also, there may be an eminent force for us to reorganize and restructure, especially if bankruptcy is imminent. So imminent may be bankruptcy rather may be an imminent need that forces us to change, which we call business reorganization or corporate restructuring. So basically, need for reorganization will arise or as an organization we are experiencing loss of our market share, reduction in our profit margin, and without profit an organization cannot move forward. If there are major changes in the marketplace and as an organization for whatsoever reason we could not cope, we need to change the dynamics. If there is a new turning point that we just have to make. And last but not least of the need that I mentioned is that if we are passing through bankruptcy process. Now, when we want to implement or we are answering a reorganization question as a student or as students, we need to critically understand 4 levels of restructuring that we make an organization to be successful in implementing reorganization. And what are they? The first level of critical understanding of implementation of corporate restructuring is to ask ourselves why the need for the change. Why the change? What is forcing us to change? What forces us to change? We need to know. Don't forget I earlier mentioned some needs that could force us to change. So we must focus, even in the scenario that the question we create, we must focus on why the organization must change. Why do we really need to change? If we can answer that correctly and lay it at heart, then the second level of critical understanding is that we answer what shift must we make? What shift must we make? And this takes us to answering the question whether the shift should be operational shift or it should be financially focused. So what shift must we make now that we agree that something has forced us to change and implement reorganization, which could be loss of our market share, it could be bankruptcy process that forces us, or we are experiencing reduction in our profit margin and the like. Now, what shift must we make? Do we need to implement based on operational, or we need to implement financial changes? We are going deeper little by little, as you could observe. Okay, so we need to answer that question, because many times, even though reorganization, at a point we combine the two, please know that they are actually different, and as we continue you will know the differences between the types of reorganization or corporate restructuring that we can have. So having know our why and understanding of what, we need to now establish the process to adopt for reorganization and how to go about reorganization. This is a very sensitive topic, and that is why it is at the level of professional exams that you will be having this kind of topic, because it requires skill and maturity. So what process are we going to put in place for the reorganization not to flop? What process, how should we go about it so that at the end of the day we can achieve our aim of reorganization? Don't forget, when we are talking about business reorganization, is to return the organization to profitability. Those are the aims. Return the organization to viability, return the organization to better goodwill and the like. These are some of the business reorganization, corporate restructuring objectives. Last but not the least, having known our processes, and as a student, let me pause here and discuss, as a student, this third level of critical understanding, you may be asked and required to draw up a process and how the scenario or the client that they are picturing in the question should go about implementing the capital restructuring. We will not be able to do that in this episode, but as we continue, and that's why it's important for you to subscribe, to encourage us, and also more importantly for you not to miss on other series in this topic. Like and comment also. So we need, last but not the least, to have understanding of what is next and the future plan, because after we've restructured and we are moving on, the question is, we are moving on to what? Don't forget, in human psychology, we always like to be in the comfort zone. So what is comfortable for us as organization, as a people, we've changed from it to a new thing. Now, if we did not put process, which is the third level of understanding, and plan for the future in place, if we fail at implementation of these two, then the organization somehow will recourse back to the old ways and the like, even though the old ways and the like may be non-existent because the organization had moved on, but the old way of doing things and mentality may still be there, and the organization will not at the end of the day be successful in implementing business reorganization. We've seen this happening all around, and this that I just mentioned is actually examinable. Why do business reorganization, corporate restructuring fail? These are some of the reasons the reorganization of an organization could fail. So last but not the least that we are going to discuss here is on the types of business and corporate restructuring or reorganization. We've spoken about what reorganization is, the need for reorganization, the 4 critical levels of understanding for successful implementation of corporate restructuring. Now, types of business reorganization basically is broken into first 2, which is either operational or financial. But when we are talking about reorganization on the level of operational, we may be looking at merger and acquisition, and these are critical high level changes But let me take it on the low level. Operational reorganization may be as simple as changing or changes in the way we work. What do I mean? If an organization has always been on site, that is, every employee, every worker must come to the office. When we implement maybe a day or two in a week for workers, for us not to come into the office and we work remotely, that is an operational reorganization, and that may be a low level operational reorganization, but that is an operational matter. It's not financial matter. Though, like I said from the beginning, sometimes the operational reorganization may lead us to financial, but we must be able to decipher the two. So it may be as on a lower level as on-site to remote and online working, and maybe as critical operational reorganization as mergers or acquisition. Operational reorganization could involve sales of unprofitable segments too, business segments. It could be making a strategic alliance. When we make a strategic alliance, maybe with other business partners and the like, which leads us to joint ventures too. Joint venture is a way of operational reorganization. So these are some of the examples of operational reorganization. Now, the second type of business reorganization, corporate restructuring, is on the financial side, which equally has its types, basically three types of financial reorganization, and is more complex. I hope you are ready, as I am ready for you. Please, this is GJAMES Associate channel for those that are just joining, and my name is Gbenga Olatunji FCA. We had loved that you subscribe, click on notification, comment if need be, especially if you've been with us to this level. Comment and write case study so that we know that you are with us even to this level, and when you do that, we are going to say thank you to you. What form of thank you, right? You will hear from us a thank you if you comment case study for being with us now. So let's move on and cap it up on reorganizations financial types. We can talk about capital reorganization as a type of financial reorganization and corporate restructuring. We can talk about capital reduction, and we must talk about capital restructuring. Capital restructuring. Don't forget I had earlier mentioned, we are not going to elaborate on evaluation of the implementation of reorganization or restructuring, because it is more complex. We are building the processes and the level of understanding, which is very important. First of all, when we are talking about capital reorganization, here we are actually talking about situation where a class or classes of shares is or are cancelled or substituted for another class or classes of share. So a capital reorganization may therefore be used to effect a change in relative rights of different classes of shareholders. Perhaps when a company is involved in a business combination. So we will talk about reorganizing our capital structure. So it could be maybe more of debt structure than that of equity. And when we are talking about equity, we are talking about the level of ordinary shareholders, and when we are talking about the debt, we are talking about maybe preference shares holders, we are talking about bond holders being involved in our organization and combining it. Basically, those are aspects of capital reorganization, and we can take a look at debt restructuring as a way of capital reorganization. Don't forget, debts are those ones that are not equity, like preference share, bonds, and the like, which are mentioned. When we are talking about capital reduction, we are talking of organization in which it reduces its share capital in line with a smaller level of maybe business operations and the like. So capital reduction is the reduction of per value of shares to write off especially accumulated losses that the organization had earlier had. So it implies a reduction in nominal value of the paid up capital of an organization, and capital reduction is usually necessitated by accumulation of losses of the past that already had eroded the value of the organization. So capital reduction may also be as a result of extensive fall in the value of our assets. Don't forget, when we are talking about our assets, especially in finance, we are talking about our debt plus our equity. Let's quickly look at the conditions that an organization must meet to reduce or implement capital reduction as a way of reorganization or restructuring. It must be permitted by its article of association. Please don't forget, it must be permitted by special resolution passed by members at an annual general meeting, or at a general meeting rather. And last but not the least, the reduction must be approved by the court. The last but not the least, as we conclude, is capital restructuring. And before an organization could restructure its capital, there must be a critical need on ground, because it simply means the asset is less than the liability. The asset is less than the liability. So it's by implication, the liability at hand is significantly higher than what we have as assets to pay for it. And so it's a critical matter, and capital restructuring scheme is usually carried out as a possible alternative to liquidation. And you know what, if this alternative is not successful, liquidation is imminent, because after all, there's nothing or not too much on ground to meet the obligation of our organization. So basically, we had looked at what the restructuring really is, and we talk about changes in business strategy, corporate remodeling and model of our operations. It involves changes in management team, membership and the like. Financial restructuring and structure will change. Our legality of the organization will change, and the ownership structure will be impacted by corporate reorganization. We've spoken about the need why what forces us to change, and we look at the loss of market share could lead an organization to implement corporate restructuring or reorganization. Reduction in the profitability or profit margin can do likewise. Also, major changes in the marketplace like technology can impact us. We just must turn a new leaf and focus on new direction. We have to implement reorganization. And last but not the least that I mentioned in this episode is imminent bankruptcy. 4 critical understanding levels of understandings were looked at, and we spoke about why the change, what shift we need to make, the process we need to adopt, and what next future plan we must make. And we last but not the least look at the types of business reorganization and corporate restructuring, in which we talk about operational restructuring and financial reorganization, and we talk about mergers, acquisitions, sales of unprofitable segments, strategic alliances, joint ventures as operational reorganizations examples. And we're on the side of financial reorganization. The jugglers are 3 types, which are capital restructuring, capital reduction, and capital reorganizations. And some 2 reorganization of an organization is debt restructuring could come in, equity restructuring could come in, stock splits could come in. All these were not actually even mentioned in the video because I just wanted to be as short as possible. So these are the tools that we can use when we are talking about financial reorganization. Debt restructuring could take place, equity restructuring could take place, we could implement stock split, we could implement issuing of new share, and share repurchasing could be imminent. Also, when we are talking about particularly capital restructuring, assets of an organization must be less than its liability. So we are in dire need of change. From GJAMES Associate Channel, Gbenga, Olatunji, FCA. Don't forget to like and click subscription. We are value to life. We are value to your businesses.